Hello guys, and welcome back to our car modeling tutorial here. And in the last episode what we did was we divided up all of the different panels that we have from our model last week. So we've got all of our base mesh laid out. We've divided all of the different segments up. We can see that we've got these panel gaps inside here which we will extrude in later. What we're going to be doing in this episode and the subsequent episodes is adding all the details to each of the elements that we separated in the last episode. So our front bumper here, we're going to duplicate, flip and add in all the extras we need in terms of details and smoothing. Then we're going to do it for the bonnet, the wing and so on up the car. Now in order to do this nice and easily, what we want to do is we want to duplicate these a little bit differently to how we did last time. We want to flip them on the other side, but we want to make it so that if we was to make a change to this vertices, for example, we'll see the exact same thing happening on the other side there. So in order to do this, we want to make sure that we don't freeze any transformations. As you can see, the pivots of all of these elements here are all in the center. Now the reason for that is because they've all been separated from the overall base mesh, so our pivot is already exactly where we want it to be right now. Once we have the element put together properly, that's when we will center all the pivots and get everything nicely in the middle here. So on our front bumper here, what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this item, but like I said, a little bit differently this time. We're going to select our option here. We are going to go to edit, and then we are going to go down to the duplicate special option, and we're going to hit on this little box here to bring up our dialog box. So I've already got some sections set up here how it should be. Yours may look a little bit different. So first of all, we want our instance selected here. We don't want a copy. If you have a copy selected, it'll just be like we duplicated in the past. This time we want it to be an instance. That means that it's going to be an exact identical copy to this, but with a relationship inside. So if it was moved to move any points inside here, it will reflect on the duplicated side as well. And then we also want to make sure that we have our -1, which is inside our x-axis here. So if I was to click duplicate special there, we can see that now we have this section appear on this side, just the same as we did before. But the difference now is if I affect any vertices on here, we can see that's automatically selected on this side, and we can pull any points here, so it's exactly mirrored our geometry. Now a lot of people will do this from the start, but I find it easy enough just to model away as we go, and then we can duplicate all the items that we need when we're getting down to the nitty-gritty details. So a few things we need to consider on this model here. We need to get nice defined edges going around the front here. I think we'll need to fill this section on the front bumper as well. We have our side repeater indicator on the side here as well, which we need to have a think about. If we were going super detailed, we would also have the parking sensors that we would need to think about at this stage as well, but I don't think we'll do that ourselves. Now what we want to do is we want to tidy up the mesh as best we can first. So I've already done a little bit of that between episodes, so it's looking okay just now. But what we want to do is add a little bit more mesh where required, and duplicate some of these straight lines here just to make sure that they're super rigid when we do our smoothing. So what I'm going to do is I am going to select these two sections here. I'm just going to go to isolate select. I just want to view the selector, so I just want to view these two sections that we have just here right now. Now what we can do is if I take off our wireframe here, if we click on this element and press the number 3 on our keyboard, what's going to happen is it's going to simulate the smooth for us. So we can see here that in pressing 3 it's smoothed out this geometry, but it's also gone a little bit spongy, which we don't want just now. If we press on 2, it smooths out geometry, but it shows us the existing geometry, which means that what we can do is pull on some of the existing geometry points and we can see how that deform happens inside the smoothing group as well, with these black lines just behind. And then to get rid of all of this, to go back to our original polygons, we can hit 1. Now basically what that does is that keeps the polygons relatively low, but poly count relatively low in terms of what we can see. But it does show us exactly what it will look like when we actually come to smoothing the element out. So in terms of tidying up this mesh, it looks like we've got a little bit here. So first things first, we can see that when I hit 3 on this section, we can see that there's a slight wobbly section here. So first of all, before we do anything else, we'll just have a quick look just to see if there's anything quick that we can do in order to rectify that. It looks to me like we can pull this point out slightly here, along with this one here. So we just want to make sure that there's very little wobbliness. Now, a lot of the subdivisions that we will be adding inside here is going to help control a lot of the wobbliness as well. So what we're going to want to do is we are firstly going to want to fill a hole at the front here. So simply, in order to do that, we can select one of these edges and then its corresponding edge, and we can go to Edit Mesh here and hit Bridge, and that will bridge the gap between the polys, and then we can do the same here. So Edit Mesh and Bridge. So that means now we've got that section filled out, so that'll smooth a little bit nicer. What we're wanting to do, as we can see again, if I hit 3 here, we get kind of like this little weird kind of effect in this corner, and that's because this section here is extruded in, yet nothing else is. Now what we want to do when we do this is we want to ensure that we have a little bit of depth between the panels. If we have all of our sections back in and we have no depth in between, when we're rendering it might look a little bit dodgy depending on the elements that we can see behind. So what we want to do first is we are going to select all of these edges here, which are going to be pointed inside. But we don't want to select any of the interior edges here, so we can deselect all of those. Okay, so all we want is the very edge faces here. We also want to get rid of these ones here. Okay, that looks good to me. And what we want to do here is we're going to want to extrude in. So we're going to want to hit Ctrl E, and we are going to want to extrude in one of these points. Now we don't want to do this on the world this time. We want all of these edges to extrude in relative to the component. So what we're going to do is leave it as it is, and we're just going to drag on this blue arrow in slightly. So we only want to go slightly so it's not too much of a mess for us to clean up. So we can see that the arches here have gone in perfectly on the side there, is exactly how we would want them to. Get the bumpers here, and where the lights are, it's gone down, which again is roughly where we want it to. And this is going to allow us now to go inside, grab our vertices here, and then we can merge it to this bottom section here. So we can edit mesh and merge those sections there. And just to make that a little bit nicer of a curve, we can drag out these sections here a little bit to meet that. Okay. Maybe we'll pull them down ever so slightly. Okay, that's looking good. So now, when we hit 3 again this time, you can see that we've lost the weird waviness that's on the front facing face here. We've still got it underneath, but that's because we have one face that's extruding extra, which we can go back and sort in a little bit. So that's looking pretty good there. So on our reference images, we can see that we have our straight section here. Our edge is fairly straight, so if we go into the front here, we can see that's quite a straight edge, well, an incredibly straight edge there. Maybe not so much on the underside. Maybe the underside isn't quite as straight, but then it goes straight all the way around this edge here. So as we can see, when we smooth off this section here, we completely lose that straight edge. So what we want to do is we want to add a little bit more information inside here, which is going to give us that straight edge. So what we can do is, with our mesh tools and our insert edge loop, what we're going to want to do is insert an edge loop which is nice and close to this section here. And we'll see instantly under smoothing that that's going to look a little bit sharper. So we can see across there now that we've got a slightly sharper edge there. So what that essentially means for us is we're going to want to set another edge around there. Let's see how we look down here. Okay, so it's a little sharper at the bottom there, because that looks like it's a little bit closer, so that's good. So it looks to me like what we're going to want to do is run an edge all the way around the outside of this edge as well, just to make sure that it's super sharp. Before we do that, what we can do is use our mesh tools and insert edge loop, and we can put one towards the bottom here. So we can see now that we've got slightly sharp edge at the top and then a sharp-ish kind of edge at the bottom there, but we can easily add to that bottom one, so that's not too much of an issue just there. So to this top one here, essentially what we're going to want to do is have a line that runs all the way around this outside edge that kind of follows it all the way around here. So it's going to be a little bit tricky, because if we try to insert an edge loop here, we can see that it's going to run all the way off this side, which we don't want it to. So what we want to do is we want to insert some edge loops, but we want to do it kind of intelligently. So this is going to require us to add in some cuts inside here, just to stop the line running off as far as it does. So what we're going to want here is we're going to want to run a cut that sits nice and close here, like so. So now in our vertices view, we'll see that we have an extra line inside here, an extra vertices inside here. So what we can do now is we can use our mesh tools and we can insert an edge loop. And when we click on this edge this time, we can see that it's not running past this section because it's got a vertices there which it can't actually compute. So what we want to do here is we want to run an edge loop roughly a similar distance there. That should be fine, around this section here. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to run one around this edge as well. So we can see that's ran all the way down to the bottom here, which we don't want. So again, we're going to do the same, and we're going to use our multi-cut tool here, and we're going to drag the vertices to this lower point down there. So again, if we switch to our vertices view here, we can see that we've got an extra dot down there, so that's fine. So now, when we insert our edge loop, we'll be able to go down here, and we can see that the loop has actually stopped just there. And we should be able to now to run a loop across here. And we can see that that's ran up and around just fine, which is perfect. So what we can do now is we can draw between each of the edge loops that the vertices that we created, and then we can match those up to our vertices here, and then we can do the same up top here. Okay. Now this is no good, so we don't want a little triangle here. So what we can do with this section is select both of these vertices here, and we are going to edit mesh and merge them. So we'll merge them into one, and then we can just make sure that we haven't affected the curvature or the angle or anything there that we don't want to do. Looks good. And then we can do the same with this point down here. We can merge the two vertices like so. And then again, we can pull these points in and out just a little bit here. Just to make sure that that's sitting how it should. Oh, that's looking good. So now, if we smooth this section off, we can see that we have a nice sharp line running across the top, which is sharp, but it's not too sharp. It's not going to look too bad under rendering. And we can see that that line follows all the way around here, which is looking pretty good. There we go. So we know that we want to run another line here because we know that this needs to be an angle. So we can see on our view here that we've got a fairly sharp, it looks like it'll just be one point inside there that we're wanting to use. We also, I think what we're going to want to do is get a little bit more shape inside this section here. So we can see in the side view here that we have a bit more geometry inside here that we could add. So what we'll do is we'll bring this section down just a little bit. We'll bring this section down just a little bit as well. And then we're going to just double check that first, actually, just to make sure we haven't affected anything that we shouldn't have. And what we'll do is we will use our mesh tools again, and we'll insert another edge loop just up here. This will allow us to bring in the wheel arch section a little bit more there. Curve that out just a little bit more. I think that looks pretty good just there. Okay. So what we want to do here is we want to have an edge that is going to run down here. So simple enough to add there. We could insert an edge loop just now, but I think what we'll want to work on first is the actual arch section here. So what we're going to want to do with this section is we're going to want to use our mesh tools, and we're going to want to insert some loops here. So firstly, we will drop one there. We'll drop one on the inside of the curve, and then we'll put one on. We seem to have some on there anyway, so that'll be fine. Yeah, that's good. So we have a line going down this side, a line going down this side of the arch here. Let's see how defined that is. So we can see that it's quite defined, this edge here. So what we'll want to do is same as this section here. We'll want to have a line that's going to run down the outside, and the only thing that's going to cause us an issue is this section here. So what we're going to do is jump right in, and we will cap this off, and we'll cap this off by adding some geometry to this section here. There we go. And then that will allow us here just to pull this out a little bit, just for a bit more curve. If we didn't do that previously, so that'll be fine. So what will happen now is, because this is a triangle, the cut shouldn't go through it. So if we go to our mesh tools, insert edge loop, we should be able now to add an edge loop to the outside of this arch here, and it will stop just there for us. And then what we can do is drag our multi-cut tool down here, go behind here, check that out. So it's not too much of a harsh curve, so that looks roughly how it should, and we can see that we've got a little bit of definition running down there as well. Maybe what we'll do is we'll just run it again. We'll take it down a little bit closer here. And then we know that we want to take one across the edge as well. But what's going to happen here is we can see that this line is going down. But the problem is we can see that it's going to make this line here quite harsh. If we look inside our reference here, we can see that that's not actually got a harsh edge to that section. So in order to rectify this, what we want to do is we want to remove that line just now. And we want this to run all the way down to this point here. So that means that roughly around this section here, we can add in a point. Okay, so we're going to bring that down here, nice and close, and we will then take this section here from this edge up to this edge here. That will allow us to draw this section back in here. So we can see that we've got this slight edge just there. We've got that section in, but we don't have a harsh section here, which is exactly how we want that to be. And then we want to do something similar down this bottom section here. So we're going to go again. So we're going to go again, and we're going to place a section right here. And with our mesh tools, we can insert an edge loop, which is going to run all the way along here. And then we can cut that into place here. So essentially what you want to do when you're starting to smooth these elements is you want to have doubled up polygons in areas that we want straight edges, but where we want it to be a little bit more soft, what we want to do is we want to essentially tear off those edges here and go about halfway down, because we don't want to have everything sharp, we just want the areas that we want sharp to be sharp. So we can bring that out just a little bit. Okay, so we can see now we've got a little bit of a defined line, which is kind of counteracting up here, which is good. And that's going to run along a nice straight edge just there, which is fine. Okay, so that bottom section there is looking pretty good. And then finally what we'll do is we will, to this bottom section, is we'll insert another edge loop here. This time it's going to go right at the very bottom. Just there. Okay, so it's looking nice and sharp down there just now. Okay, so this section here now we'll have a look at. So we want to do something very similar to what we did with the other section. So we're going to use our insert edge loop tool here. Now this section here is actually fairly smooth. So what we may do is we'll just put one section just there. Just running around there, that's fine. And then we'll put one section under here just to help the integrity there. And then what we'll need to do is we'll want to put one, maybe two lines here, because we know that this section is fairly standalone. So we can see that that's under there has maintained a nice tight line, and we can see that this is still kind of curved as it comes across into the middle there, which looks pretty good. Now the only real issue is down here. So this vertices here, what we can do is if we go into our component view, we can just pull away to the opposite edge, and that shouldn't make that a little bit better for us. So we're not really going to see that when it's under the car there. So our front section there now is looking pretty good. So what we want to do now is think about around our headlight area and around the top of our bumper section here. So I think we have an issue down here in terms of interior face, which we don't want. That's much better. Okay. So what we want to do now is we want to kind of sharpen off this section here. So we need to see roughly where that sharper section should be. So we can see that there is actually a faint line coming down past the light here. So let's see if we can see it somewhere else. There is actually again a faint line that runs all the way down the side of this headlight here. Now, the issue that we have is going to be this section here, because we don't want this corner to be any harsher. That's a nice soft kind of bend that we have there. So we'll need to have a think about where we're going to run this line that goes down this section here. So if we look on the rest of our model, we can see that it's going to actually be part of the seam that we modeled in way back when. That runs all the way down here. So I think what the best option would be to run this line on the inside. So best to run this line on the inside of the curve here. What we want to do before we do that is we want to make 100% sure that this section here is looking good. Put that back to our road view here. So we want to make 100% sure that this line is nice and smooth. Just pull these points around just a little bit here. Just to make sure it's perfect before we start adding a whole load of geometry to it. So we're going to add this down to the inside, but we don't want this to curve off, so we're going to do the same again like we did before. We're going to break this section away here. So we can see on our image that it's not the sharpest, but it is defined enough, and we can see that it actually kind of softens off a little bit towards the edge anyway, which is good. What we'll actually do is we'll maybe bring this a little bit closer. So we'll maybe bring it to about here. And then what can happen is we can take this line further and further away each time. We'll use our mesh tools here to insert an edge loop, and we're going to bring this nice and close to this section here. So again, let's just double check. This section looks like it can come in. So it's far easier now to rectify any geometry issues before we actually start adding some too much areas in. So we want to make sure that everything that we do in terms of cleaning up the mesh is done first. I don't actually want to move that one around too much. Okay. So we're going to use our insert edge loop here, and we're going to bring this in nice and close to this section here, which, like I said, will allow us to then bring it out slightly over here, and then kind of continue bringing that away as we go around here, and finally down into this section there. So what we can do now is, to help this curve stay a little bit of a curve, we're going to grab all of these points and just bring them down a little bit. Now if we test that, we can see that we've still maintained a fairly decent angle there, but we can see that we've got that soft line, soft defined line coming down here as well, which is good. Now we don't want this to be too harsh, because we can see on the image that it's nowhere near as harsh as this, so you always want to find a good line between having your harsh sections really harsh, but then not all defined lines are quite as harsh as we expect, so you need to make sure that you get a good amount of depth where we need it. So that's looking good. We're going to need to now define this edge of the headlight. So we're going to do the same as what we did around the outside edge here and at the bottom of the wheel arch there. So we're going to run a line that goes down and then cuts inside all the way around here. We could actually attach that line there to actually run all the way along the edge of the bonnet as well, just to make sure that that line is nice and rigid too. So we will add a random point here, which we'll remove in a few minutes. So we'll insert an edge loop nice and close to this edge here. We're also going to have one on the inside, which is going to make this super nice and defined. And then what we'll be able to do is run one down here. And then what we'll probably need to do is again insert random edge loop there, multi-cut, which will allow us to bring this here. Okay, so before anything else, we'll remove these points here just before we forget. And that will allow us here to grab these points, edit mesh, merge. Just make sure that these are in the correct place. Look at the component view. They look okay. We can now bring these points down and around here. And we'll probably want to be a bit closer there, so we'll bring that there. Push this down here. And then we'll merge this point to this section. Now I think we've selected some rear facing vertices there. Okay, so we can see that nice edge now going all the way around, which is good. Now we're going to want to straighten this off as well as the headlight section here too. So now we can see we've got a nice defined line running around that top edge there as well, which is good. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to define these edges, these corners here. We need to define this corner here, this one here as well. This corner is a bit curved. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so it looks like it's probably got a little bit too much of a curve there. Yep, so it's looking like we've definitely got more of an angle on that section, so we'll need to add in a bit more geometry there as well. So, do the easy ones first. So we want to have a point in this section here, so we're going to go slap bang in the middle there, and we're going to go slap bang in the middle here. So that means we can use our mesh tools, and we are going to insert an edge loop, which is up close and personal to that corner there. And then we're going to do the same here. Hopefully we'll be able to get away with just one on each bit. And then we can drop one in the middle here. Maybe a bit closer to the middle of the two. One in the middle here. Now in terms of curvature, that looks pretty good already, so we'll just leave that. Bring these points down to meet. Okay. So we can see now that we haven't affected any of the geometry around this section here, but we do now have the nice defined edges there. Let's see if they need to be more defined. No, I think that looks pretty good. So again, make sure that it's relative to your actual image. There's no need for everything to be absolute bolt right angle turns. So that's looking pretty good there now. With this section here, it looks like it could be a little bit tricky. Now, we want to define this line here, and we want to define this edge here. So I think in order to take a little bit of curve out of this section here, what we'll want to do is we'll want to add some vertices going around here. So if we slap one in the middle there, that will allow us to drop and insert an edge loop in fairly close to that corner. Now we know it's not completely straight, so we'll go fairly close there. And we can then drop a line through there, just like that. And go to the middle here. in Edgeloop instead. And again, that looks fine. Looking down the way, maybe we can pull this edge out just a little bit. So I want the world view here. Okay, that's good. We'll do the same on this line as well. Okay, so again, we haven't affected anything down here, but this is a lot nicer of a curve for our headlight inside there, which is good. Now, tricky bit. So, think what will happen here is we're going to want to run a line down here. So we can see on our reference that again it's not completely straight, not a complete angle, but it's close to one. So I think what we'll want to do is want to insert an edge loop, and we'll want that to run down here so that we can help define that line there. So we can see now that we've got somewhat of a defined line down there, and then a nice slight curve on that headlight there. But what we're also going to want to do is define the line that comes down here and up this section as well. So maybe let's maybe undo that first. I think got a little bit of a wobble there. Okay, so we're going to want to take this edge all the way down here. Then we're going to want to keep it coming down this section as well. So maybe what we'll do is we will drop an edge loop down the so maybe if we go underneath, and then we can go up the outside, and then we can go around as well. So we'll drop a point in the middle here. We will drop a point in the middle here. So that will allow us now to insert an edge loop which runs all the way down and along this section here to tighten that up. And then we'll be able to insert an edge loop down the middle here. And whilst we're here, what we can actually do is we can help define that a little. Run that up. And that's pretty good. Then we can add a edge loop here, which before we do anything we'll ensure that it's maintaining curvature. There we go. can now see that we're starting to get a little bit of an outline along there as well. Now it doesn't look like much in this view, but that will offer some nice reflections when we actually do render, and we can see that it's not hugely defined inside there, but we will be adding a little bit more to that edge as well. We will now need to consider the same again here. And this one should fall quite nicely because it should run around the corner for us, so it should actually come up and then around here. So if we drag this down like so, it should now allow us to run up this edge here. Yep. And then we could insert an edge loop which runs down here. So we can see now that we've got quite good definition down that edge there. We've also got good definition inside here as well. So we can see that this actually curves into this, so it's not actually completely straight going out the way there. So ours actually reflects that quite nicely, so we can see that we've got this curve around here rather than a straight section now, which looks pretty good. What we could maybe do is we could actually smooth this edge off a little bit quicker, so we can delete those edges. We'll delete the vertices that comes with them, and what we could maybe do is we could come down here a little bit sooner. Let's have vertices there. That's not better there. We can see that there's no real waviness around the edges here too much. We do need to, however, add the extra section inside here. So inside here we can see that we created that extra vertices here. So what we'll do is we'll bring this one a little bit higher. We'll bring this one up a little bit with it as well. Let's just make sure that's still looking good at the front. Let's bring this out a little bit here. just make sure that we've got that curve still here. Okay, let's just go in the component here just to make any final little wiggles, just to get these a little bit further away from each other. Okay, check everywhere else just to make sure it's all looking good as well. So we can see now we've got far less waviness over on this side here after straighten those out. Got that nice and defined inside here as well. And then we can see that this side here has mirrored exactly what we've done. Save half the job there. So that's looking pretty good. Now it looks like the only thing that we need to do now on this side is add in the side repeater, the signal here. So what we're going to do for that is we are going to drop a point here and here to make the outline there. We're going to come from this corner and we're going to come into that and then down here. So that will allow us now to delete this edge here. So we've essentially just made a cut inside there, which should still be following the curvature of the section there. So you can see when we smooth that out, you can see that's made very little effect to the actual model itself. And what we'll want to do with this section is we will want to, we've got a few options here. We could cut the point out, or we could extrude the point in. So what I think we'll do is, if we grab all the faces here, what we'll do is we will delete this line, this face, and this face, which will allow us then to extrude this item in. So Control E for that. We'll do this on the world option, and we'll take this in here. Yep. Now, I think what we'll actually do, take that back. Maybe we'll keep these edge faces here. So Control E, we'll go in again. Something like that. We'll just take that in slightly. Okay, and then if we Control E again, we can just bring the point back out here. So I think what we'll want to do is just bring these a little bit closer. I think that was the wrong point that we moved up here. Now we see under smoothing we've kind of lost a little bit of the integrity of this section here. So what we'll do is we will insert some edge loops here, which we can drop in there, and then we'll do the same on the inner section as well. Guess that's a little bit better there. What we'll do is we will need to pop the point. Let's try that and see if that works. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Just there. And then what we can do is we can extract those front facing faces in order to create them as the glass, and then put some chrome sections behind for the repeater there. Okay guys, so we can see now a real difference between our front section here and our other section. So we can see that's a whole lot smoother. It's got a whole lot of details inside there, ready to go for our next part. So thanks a lot for watching guys, please like and subscribe, and in the next episode we'll be working across some far less complicated parts like the bonnet, should only take a few minutes, the wing and the door and such. The only real tricky parts is going to be, I imagine, the rear section here, the diffuser, and maybe the side skirt as well. Okay guys, cool.